All right, today we are getting into the minds of top executives. We're going to break down the critical tools they use to make those billion-dollar decisions about their own companies. How they figure out what to grow, what to just maintain, and what to cut loose. So let's put you in the driver's seat for a second. Imagine you're the CEO. You've got 10 different products. Some are total rock stars, others are just kind of there, and a few are really struggling. Where do you put your money? Who gets your best people? This single question is the key to everything we're about to talk about. So, how do you even begin to answer a question like that? You can't just go with your gut feeling, right? You need a system, a formal way of looking at the problem, and that, my friends, is where strategy evaluation comes into play. It's our starting point. Look, the whole complex world of strategic management really just boils down to three big steps. First, you have formulation. That's when you dream up the plan. Then comes implementation, where you actually put the plan into action. And finally, and this is the one people often forget, you have evaluation. This is that crucial moment of truth where you step back and ask, is any of this actually working? And you absolutely cannot skip this step because, let's be honest, even the most brilliant strategy has a shelf life. The market shifts, your competitors get smarter, and what worked yesterday might be a total disaster tomorrow. Evaluation is your feedback loop, your control system. It's what lets you make adjustments before it's too late. What's really interesting here is how we measure success. It's not just one thing. It really comes down to two key ideas. On one hand, you have effectiveness, which is all about the big picture. Are we even doing the right things? And on the other hand, you have efficiency, which is about the details. Are we doing things right? You could be incredibly efficient at doing something that's completely wrong. You've got to have both. Okay, now let's get to the most famous tool in the shed for this kind of work. Business portfolio analysis. And I love this idea. It asks you to stop thinking about your products as separate things and start seeing them as a collection, or, like our slide says, a corporate zoo. You've got different animals, and each one needs to be cared for in a very specific way. So the textbook definition is basically what it sounds like. You're looking at all your business units as if they were a portfolio of stocks. The whole point is to balance everything out to get the absolute best return on your company's most precious resources, your time, your money, and your people. And this is it. This is the tool that changed the game. The Boston Consulting Group came up with this incredibly simple yet powerful 2x2 grid to help executives literally see their portfolio on a single page. It maps out every single business unit based on just two things: how fast its market is growing and how big your slice of that pie is. Up in the top left corner, you've got your stars. These are your champions, your high flyers, they're in fast-growing markets, and you're a dominant player. The classic example for years was Apple's iPhone. Now, stars generate a ton of cash, but they also burn through a ton of cash to keep growing and stay on top. You have to feed your stars, because they are your future. Next, down in the bottom left, are the cash cows. Now, these are often yesterday's stars. The market has matured, the crazy growth has slowed down, but they are still the leader. And because they don't need massive investment anymore, they just generate cash, day in and day out. Think Microsoft Windows. It's the stable, reliable financial engine that funds everything else. Over on the top right, things get tricky. These are the question marks. They're the wild cards. They're in exciting, high-growth markets, which is great, but you don't have a strong position. So what does that mean? It means they burn through cash like crazy just to keep up. This is where you have to make a tough call. Do you double down and invest a ton of money to try and turn it into a star? Or do you cut your losses? And finally, in the bottom right, you have the dogs. These are businesses with a small market share in a slow-growing industry. The iPod in its final years is a pretty good, if sad, example. They don't generate much cash, they don't have much of a future, and they can be a real drain on management's attention. The conventional wisdom? Sell them or shut them down. Okay, so the real magic happens when you see how the money flows between these boxes. This table just lays it out perfectly. The cash cows generate this huge surplus of cash. And where does that cash go? It gets funneled over to feed the hungry stars and to place calculated bets on your most promising question marks. It's a beautiful, self-funding ecosystem for growth. And just like that, you have a playbook. It's a really clear strategic path. Step 1, you milk your cash cows for every dollar you can. Step 2, you pour that money into your stars to make sure they stay on top. Step 3, you sift through your question marks and bet big on the ones you think can become stars. And step 4, you get rid of the dogs to free up cash and, just as importantly, focus. But, the real world is almost never that neat and tidy. And as powerful as the BCG matrix is, it's just a model. It's a great place to start, but strategists pretty quickly realized they needed to add a little more nuance to make these massive company-changing decisions. I mean, for starters, is market growth the only thing that makes an industry attractive? Not really. And is market share the only sign of strength? Of course not. Plus, the model totally ignores synergies. What if one of your dog businesses makes a critical part for one of your stars? And it definitely doesn't have a box for the real human cost of selling off a division. So, all those limitations, they actually pushed people to create even better, more sophisticated tools. A perfect example is this, the GE/McKinsey 9-box matrix. It takes the same core idea, but expands that simple 4-box grid into a much more detailed and subtle 9-box version. Here's the key upgrade. Instead of just market growth, it uses a much broader idea, industry attractiveness. That could include market size, profitability, competition, a whole bunch of factors. And instead of just market share, it looks at overall business unit strength, which could mean your brand, your tech, your people. It gives you a way richer, more customized picture of where you really stand. So we've walked through all these grids, these stars and cows and question marks. What's the big takeaway from all this? How should you actually think about these tools? And this is maybe the most important thing to remember. These tools, none of them, give you a magic answer. They are a compass, not a map. A map tells you exactly which roads to take. A compass just points you in the right direction. Their job is to start a smart, data-driven strategic conversation, not to end it. So I'll leave you with a final thought. This way of thinking doesn't just apply to giant corporations. You can use it on yourself. Seriously, think about your own career. What are your cash cows, those reliable skills that always pay the bills? What are your stars, the high-growth areas where you're really killing it? Your question marks, those new things you're thinking about investing time in. And maybe, what are the dogs, the old habits or projects that are just draining your energy for no real reward? It's a pretty powerful way to think about your own personal strategy.